All right, Marc, what do you think? Should we get started?
Yeah, let's get started. If you have any other thoughts while hearing about the latest release in the first 15 minutes or while we do Q&A at the end, feel free to just continue to add them to the chat. If you have questions already, we'll later on use the Q&A feature by Google Meet. Under activities, you also find Q&A. You can also start adding questions there. We'll also have a look at the chat whether there's anything, but Q&A in Google Meet are really good. So if you can put them there, this is also amazing, especially regarding the question Nicholas just added. Okay, let's get started. Thanks everyone for joining. The session will be recorded, so you can have a watch at it afterwards as well. Generally, thanks first of all, everyone, for the great discussion that we usually have async via GitHub or Discord. It's really been so helpful to understand what to build, how to shape the project, as now thousands of teams depend on Langfuse for their production LM deployments and the applications. And it's been a lot of fun over the last year to build the company and project together with all of you. So thanks a lot. On the right side, you'll see a brief update on our team. Last time we hosted the session, it was 5. We added since then Yannick, who's also on the call, and Steffen on the content side, as well as on backend engineering. As the project grows, also the backend grows a ton. So Steffen owns basically improving a lot of our overall infrastructure for Langfuse to scale to projects that are way, way, way larger of what we currently host in aggregate on our cloud deployment as well. Yeah, both contributions and bug reports have been super helpful in general. Agenda, as mentioned, we'll do super quick updates to keep it crisp. 15 minutes, quick recap on product scope, what's Langfuse, what's in scope, what's out of scope, latest releases, just a highlight reel, roadmap, outlook on the next, I'd say 1 to 3 months roughly. So what are we excited about? What will we ship next? And then for the rest of the time, we'll just do Q&A via Google Meet. On the bottom right, you can add questions, but we'll also have time at the end to add more questions, upvote them, and then let's just have a conversation about whatever is interesting. Last time there were so many interesting things that we then shipped or other people contributed. So this has been a lot of fun. Quick recap on Langfuse. What we try to solve for ourselves and everyone is basically the whole workflow of shipping LLM-based applications end-to-end, where monitoring tracing is a big part, but also then how to evaluate, how to manage prompts, how to deploy prompts, how to understand how different experiments yield results, where problems are, and how to take things back from production into development to actually benchmark an application while in development. This is the core problem statement, and we continue to try to deliver on this overall scope while being fully platform and LLM agnostic and easy to self-host both in the enterprise and for hobby projects. Positioning, we have a page that we continuously update, langfuse.com/y, which basically is half manifesto, half kind of competitive positioning. People contrast us with other projects in this space. And it's just has been a positive view on how to compare us to other projects in this space. Quick highlight reel on metrics since we last talked. Now Langfuse SDKs, these are just the public metrics where the SDKs are installed over 2 million times a month, or at least that's the installs, which isn't really an install, but hey, it's the public metric. Over 500,000 Docker pulls and over 5,500 GitHub stars. So we see a strong adoption both in startups and the enterprise, which has been super fun to see. So let's get to demos. This is the list, and we'll just now do a 1-by-1 demo of it, and I'll try to do all of this in 5 minutes, hopefully. So let's present something else and present my window, and then we can go through all of them. So first, we shipped the first, I think, native integration with the Vercel AI SDK. Us personally, when teams develop in JavaScript or TypeScript and want to build especially generative UI or more front-end user-facing applications, we often recommend the AI SDK as a really neat, clean abstraction of both LLMs and then common usage patterns. While they definitely had a second mover advantage here, it's really clean and not as bloated as some other frameworks. So when Lars, one of the maintainers, reached out that they plan to add OpenTelemetry-based instrumentation to the SDK, we were super excited to be one of the first platforms to officially support it. So whatever's going on in the Vercel AI SDK can just be traced to Langfuse by just adding the Langfuse exporter, which then collects all of these OpenTelemetry traces and adds them to Langfuse in the same kind of like UI and developer experience that you're used to from all of the other integrations. Just like shout out, if you build in JavaScript, TypeScript, or build something like user-facing in the front end, I think the AI SDK is awesome. And I also used it personally a couple of times for different demos. Okay, second, we released organizations as a way to group projects and users, which usually helps as teams grow, but also as, for example, different environments grow and you want to separate production development into separate projects for role-based access control, or generally just have multiple use cases that have different users that should have access to it. So organizations help us group projects and then over time also make more releases that are more organizational focused and multi-project. So this came with a couple of UI changes and then lots of like new ABAC controls. Then evaluation is a really centerpiece of most users once they got started with tracing in Langfuse or general observability. And until now, you were able to like filter by scores or sort by scores or filter or view scores on a single trace, but or see aggregates, I think, in this one chart. But this one chart, if you use evals like a lot, this gets really messy. So Malise added basically score breakdowns for the different score types and extended scores both to categorical as well as Boolean scores and not only numeric. So now if we take some scores, we can see, like, for example, for the 1 month, 3 month time frame I picked up here, we can both see, like, for example, like an histogram and an average, how it evolved over time, which just makes it easier to then work with different score objects and get an understanding for it. And we also plan to add more scoring dashboards and correlation matrices and stuff over the next releases, just to be able to work more productively with a ton of scores. Then fourth, another workflow feature that was commonly requested was just like, let us add comments to stuff. And comments are basically just like this is nice supports, I think, Markdown. So we can add comments, reply to comments, just as like a way to be more collaborative when you, for example, debug things in Langfuse. This works across sessions, traces, and prompts. And we, I think, yesterday or today released also an API for this if you want to add more comments from other places to Langfuse as well. Fifth, we released the first multimodal support across Langfuse for images. So whenever you use multimodal models via the ChatML OpenAI API style with these kind of content parts and use images via like a source URL, these will be rendered within Langfuse as like an image. First of all, like when you see the trace, you will just see this kind of like link and a button. So you need to click it because we don't want to like load any external images in case users could inject something into your browser otherwise. So this works, and we'll extend it as I'll get to when chatting about roadmap. Then kind of excited about this change, as prompt management is the only feature where Langfuse is super critical that we have like almost zero or zero latency and are always up. Like you always, like if you use Langfuse for prompt management, you want prompts to be always there and to be there instantly. And we made a change that gets to this result by refreshing basically a prompt cache in the SDKs in the background. And you can also prefetch prompts on, for example, when your Docker instance starts. And thereby, you always have a prompt version instantly delivered to your application. And then, like after a minute, you can configure it. It just gets like refetched in the background, but it will always be returned instantly. So when you use Langfuse prompt management for collaborative prompt management, this now has like zero performance impact on your application, which was very important to many teams. Then one of the, I think, most requested, oh yeah, we linked it. I think this is like the most upvoted, and there are like a couple of more threads on GitHub discussions. Thread on GitHub. And this is basically linking traces to prompt versions when using LangChain, because this worked across many of our other integrations, but not with the LangChain, because basically you just have this huge LangChain application which could use multiple prompts. And Hasib got to like a really nice DX here, where if you use LangChain and use Langfuse prompt management, you can just add this kind of prompt template metadata to pass reference to the prompt to then connect the two, because then you profit from like Langfuse giving you metrics for each prompt version, and you can easily navigate between prompt versions and traces. And all of this worked beautifully for people on the SDKs and OpenAI SDK, but not on LangChain. Now we extend this to LangChain. Really excited about this. Then the core experience around tables improved dramatically after the last community session, because many people were just like, hey, let me like change the width of columns, or I want to reorder something. So we can now resize, reorder. We broke down all of the score columns into separate columns, because if you have a lot of eval scores, before they were like in one column, I think like separated by a comma or something. Now we broke them out, which is way more helpful, and added custom columns for the non-numeric evaluation score types. Now the last two releases are interesting for everyone like running Langfuse on their own infrastructure. Basically, now you can initialize a Langfuse without having to sign into the Langfuse instance. So you can provide like a default organization ID, default project ID, default credentials for a user and for as an API key pair to then use Langfuse when you have like lots of different environments that you want to deploy an Langfuse instance to. If you deploy Langfuse on-prem together, bundled with the application, with, for example, your own enterprise customers, like no one needs to sign into the instance, and you just have your default credentials to then sign to the instance without having to manage this manually. This was like also, I think, one of the 10 most requested changes, I guess, but for a long time blocked by this organizational change, because we were afraid to then break this once we release organizations. Now happy that our like entity model is stable enough for us to build this. So I was really happy about it. And finally, for people self-hosting as well, we can now deploy or run Langfuse on a custom base path, which wasn't possible for a very long time. And unfortunately, it's like a build time argument, so you need to build your own Docker images. But if you build them, you can then pass your own base path, and we made sure that it should work end-to-end. As always, if you run into any issues, depending on your environment, please just like raise an issue on GitHub, and we'll have a look. Awesome. This is it for the releases. Let's jump back to slides to talk a bit about roadmap and then open it up. Give me a second. Let's present something else. Where is it? So many tabs. Public? No, this is the right one. Perfect. So this is it for like the latest releases. And with regarding to roadmap, there are a couple of key things I wanted to highlight, because they, I would expect them to come up later as well. For one, we want to extend multimodal traces to base64 images, and then video, audio, and file attachments. Here we are especially interested in how the like streaming multimodal models will work over the next releases by most providers, because this will be really exciting once for example, like LLM APIs receive like, for example, like a WebSocket of an audio stream, like how to actually like monitor this in Langfuse. Really excited about this, because so many new problems and interesting insights to surface. Then an annotation queue to basically label data in Langfuse and build workflows around it, meaning you can then like move traces into queues based on rules, and then have other people on the team or yourself just like working through them to label the data. Why labeling? Most teams want to get to fully automated evaluations, but then in the end need some kind of like baseline to ground their evals and compare whether their automated evaluation technique works or whether the user feedback actually helpful. So lots of workflows rely on manual labeling, and we'll cover this way better, probably with like a beta release early next week is our current idea on this. Then webhooks generally, both queues receive like rule-based traces in our like V1, V2 version of it, as well as then to be able to define rules to run like downstream workflows on top of what's happening in Langfuse based on webhooks. Next, a side-by-side comparison of dataset runs. This is more for like the development offline experience, so that you can compare once you run experiments, that you have an idea of what changed from one experiment run to the next. And Llama Index released a very exciting instrumentation module, I think a couple of weeks back. We have a beta version out, and we want to get this to GA to deprecate the callback-based version of the Llama Index integration, because this is basically deprecated on their side as well. It has a couple of bugs, and we'd just like to move to the most recent and then stable callback system or instrumentation system of Llama Index. And there are some roadmap candidates currently with the main themes around tracing, where for example, cost tracking across models is a big one, because Google, Anthropic, with their context caches, for example, broke our current cost tracking as long as you don't ingest cost into Langfuse, as well as, for example, the O1 class of models is interesting, as in you want to maybe track more what's happening on the reasoning side, and multimodal models to improve cost tracking there as well. And the developer experience in development, because while data sets are great if you are an engineering team and you want to run your application against data set in Langfuse and then see traces and see how scores change, we think we can do way better to support teams in the UI to then, for example, from a single prompt, run them on a data set, see how the evals change, to close the loop way faster, just to get from oh, we could do these 10 things, to get to the insight of what we actually want to do as the next step as an engineering team faster. So we'll focus more on the development phase as well, while a lot of effort in the past was spent on the production environment of LM applications. This is the rough view on our roadmap. There's a ton more. At this point, I wanted to highlight the best thing to overall chat with everyone about this basically is the GitHub discussion forum, on which both contributors as well as we as the core team saw a ton of items. Meaning, if you go to ideas, for example, we can have a look at top all. We can see a ton of feature requests and then discussions on them. For example, I mentioned LangChain support for prompt management, which was released this week. There's been quite a discussion on different ways to solve it, which was really cool, as well as the custom base URL, where just people highlighting that this is something they need within the organization, as they can't get a subdomain for the Langfuse service, was really interesting. So if you have any kinds of requests or ideas, feel free to add them here, or just upvote on the things you like, or comment on the things you like. I think this is the best way to steer the project in the direction that you want to see, next to just raising the comment in the Q&A section now. So I'll try to get back to the slides. Present something else. Perfect. Because now, thanks again. Discussions on GitHub and Discord are amazing. Contributions and bug reports. This is us again. If any one of you or your smart friends are in Europe, we are hiring in Berlin, in person, for product engineering and developer relations, product marketing. So if you know someone who might be interested, let us know. Feel free to directly connect them with us or reach out to us personally. Happy to chat. And yeah, let's do Q&A. Really excited about this. Last time was really fun. On the right side, just the links for the ideas, which is basically the roadmap, support if you have any detailed technical questions, and the Discord. And then on the left side, this kind of little how to do Q&A in Google Meet, as there is the chat, but usually the Q&A section is really helpful to then get to what's most interesting for everyone to talk about.
Maybe Marc, maybe we should go through the chat. A few things came up. So maybe there's sort of, while people enter their questions into the Q&A feature, I think we've got quite a few on the chat already. Do you just want to take them, or should I?
Yeah, I think I can quickly take them. So Kevin asked, what kind of events are you thinking of exposing via webhooks? I think there are two main groups of events, from a technical standpoint. The ones that are high throughput, meaning all of the tracing events, where if you apply filters, you would then have a lot of throughput usually. So this is one thing. I think we'll probably with webhooks start first on, for example, releases of new prompt versions, like changes to data sets, because especially in the like offline and CI use case, it's really interesting to have webhooks to, for example, when you have like a new prompt version created, to then, based on a webhook, for example, run your whole application in like some sort of GitHub action or runner against the new prompt version that you just created. These kinds of workflows are really interesting. And probably we'll start with like new prompt versions that are created with webhooks, and then extend it to tracing while being able to create filters, like for which traces you want to get these webhooks. I'll try to scroll up to see the next question.
There's one from
will you
Paulo.
support the OpenAI's client beta features, e.g. parse? I want to use the new structured outputs with the Pydantic object. We do have basic support for it generally, because this under the hood then again uses the like basic completions API. So if you use OpenAI, like the import wrapper or the import replacement, this should work, and we have like a notebook on this. But if you feel like the support could be better, please open like a bug report on GitHub, and we are happy to have a look. I think probably support that can be extended to have like the Pydantic objects more nicely rendered somewhere. So if you have like an opinion on this, please open an issue. Would love to have a look. This was Nicholas. Then, Clemens, do you see the next best question?
Yeah, there's a bunch. So Paulo, like let's start at the top. Paulo asked about anonymizing sensitive data in traces. I think LLM security, Marc.
Yeah, I think we debated a couple of times the best like DX around this, because there's like, for one, adding like an anonymizer on the like API level. So you send all of the data as you send it to the LLM, also to Langfuse, and then we anonymize on the API level to then only save data in an anonymized way. But thereby we would assume that we, like Langfuse as a project, can have an anonymizer that's sufficient for all use cases. We think that's not the case, because with the teams we chatted about anonymization, the like requirements diverge. So what we'll probably add is an anonymization callback to all of the integrations. So you can add your own anonymization function, and we'll just highlight a couple of popular things as like hiding SSNs or hiding email addresses, or using an open source library to do anonymization. And then you can customize and apply your own regex functions, basically.
Right. Then William asked if we're planning to create a university-style teaching link like the LangChain release last week. I think that's LangChain Academy or LangChain University, as they called it. I mean, I think I can also take that, William. Short answer is yes. We will, and we do, add more and more content on how to use Langfuse. That is on langfuse.com/guides. Which is also in the documentation. There's documentation, FAQ, and guides at the very top in the menu. And that's basically where we collect all sorts of cookbooks, tutorials, videos that show you how to work with Langfuse. Right now, I'd say that's more of a motley group of like everything that's out there, and not a like customized learning path, but that's definitely an interesting thought to take forward with us. Thank you so much, William. All right, Yiza asked the feature request, choosing multiple traces and comparing timelines, for example, to compare model app version performance.
Yeah, I think this is interesting when you have a way to select two traces reliably. Applies more to like the development workflow, where then you know what to compare. But I think on like the trace list, to just like when you filter down, you have an idea of what you want to view, then like selecting a couple of them and then seeing them side by side would be really cool. So I think this is like a great idea. Shall we maybe, Clemens, switch to the questions first instead of like feature requests, because otherwise like questions are like last time were way more actionable, and then we can just take the feature requests and move them basically to GitHub to the GitHub idea spot afterwards.
Okay, let's do that. I mean, there was a follow-up on the webhooks, which is the late.
Yeah. I can see it. So based on webhooks, would be good to emit an event that an interaction gets scored. We're using this to track feedback on the accuracy of the agent, and would be good to get real-time info when someone downloads a response. Yes, I think like scores are like definitely, there are like so many downstream use cases where people want to get them into like a Slack channel, or want to get emails based on them, or do something in case they use Langfuse to then store user feedback, or when like they're monitoring of, I don't know, a competitor was named, or we had like a toxic response. If something must not happen at all, then getting a webhook alert whenever this one thing that shouldn't happen at all happens makes a ton of sense. So this makes sense.
Okay, then I think we can just move it over to the Q&A section, Marc. Should we start by popularity with when is V3 going to be released?
Yeah, we currently have like some like a large part of what's changing with version 3 is basically that we add another container to process all traces that come into Langfuse asynchronously and at a queue, just like to make Langfuse way more scalable and reliable when like traffic is spiky. This is already running on our cloud version, which means like a large part of the change is completed and we know that it works. The one thing that is in progress is basically the migration to ClickHouse as a main data store. And generally with regards to timeline, we expect something in like the area of October to November-ish. But as we like here, generally, we want to make sure that this is like a one-way transition that's like super smooth and where we don't have like any kinds of like hiccups, meaning like we will continue to update the one main GitHub discussion thread on this. And whenever we have like an updated timeline or like a release candidate to test, basically, if you're interested.
All right, the next question was, will Langfuse remain open source, at least a self-hosted version? What are the changes that you plan for self-hosted versus paid enterprise versions?
Yes, happy to take it. Generally, we want to keep all of the core that exists in Langfuse open source, meaning tracing, all integrations, scores, eval logic, the dashboarding experience, all APIs, prompt management, data sets for testing applications locally. All of this should remain open source. What we plan to release basically as closed source, it's like source available but on a commercial license, is on the one hand like security and administration features that are usually only relevant in like larger teams that run Langfuse commercially, meaning like more like RBAC controls, being able to provision users in larger teams, more like syncing, for example, with authentication providers, these kinds of features. And on the other hand, like add-ons that hook into the core tracing experience, but that aren't really, that are like an add-on. Like, for example, the playground is currently part of the like commercial version when self-hosting. What's the reasoning here generally? Like we see many open source projects when they are like companies and try to be commercially viable, that they really like kneecap the core product experience, meaning like you could use tracing, but if you want to use tracing at scale, you need to move to the cloud product or need to move to the commercial product. And we want to 100% keep this kind of core product experience open source while still finding ways to like interact commercially with our largest customers who self-host. So this is kind of like a balance we try to strike. If you have any feedback on this, please let us know. Like we want to be as open about this because all of the core of what you like, if you self-host the open source version, which you like know and love, then this like should all stay open source. And we want to be very, very transparent about this. And it will basically like when we release new features that are like fully like separate from the core, then some of them might end up in the commercial version if we deem them to be like more add-ons. But many of the like releases that are shown you, I think, except for did we have like a commercial release? No, not a single one in the basically update this time. So like all of the ones, like most corporate features will end up in the MIT license version.
Perfect. If you have any follow-up questions, you can also unmute yourself and sort of join the conversation if there's anything sort of to what Marc just said. Next question is, what's the workflow for annotations? Can you define those steps more? And then the question after that is also, can you elaborate a little bit more on the annotation queue?
Yes. I think what's easiest here, I'll just quickly share how annotation looks like today in case you haven't used this. So I'll try, let's see, I'll need to find this tab. Okay, this tab. So this is like a trace, and if you hit annotate, you currently see this annotation drawer where you can select the different evals that you configured in your project, and you can manage basically which evals exist as like score configs. So you can, for example, say we want to have booleans or like categorical values and add more categories to it. So you can administer in a central place what you want to be used as like score configs, and then you can just select them and annotate data in Langfuse. This is what exists today, and what we will build around this is basically a way to have like a work queue that lets you on the one side like enqueue objects. So for example, here apply filters as for example, we only want user IDs that contain, I don't know, a 1, and then like, I don't know, let's take user feedback as like a score. I hope there is any of them. So user feedback, like smaller or equal 1 in the last 3 months. So basically defining like a search criterion and then being able to just enqueue all of them, like add all of the traces of this filter then to a queue. And the queue basically stores which kind of annotations should be made, meaning these labels that you can select here, you select them on a queue level. And then for each of the queues, you just see how many items are there yet to be like evaluated. And the UI will change a bit, meaning we'll have the draw on the right side, but it will always be expanded. Just on the left side, like a big input, big output. Like you can switch to the full trace, but for most annotation workflows, just seeing inputs and outputs in like a UI that's easy to understand for domain experts is key. So you can then like label data and then just hit like finish and next. So really like a UI where you can sign in and just do your annotation job and then sign out again, as usually these are like separate people on the team. So this is what we plan to build. Also with like API capabilities to enqueue via API, or also to dequeue or remove items from the queues. Initially, all items will be like scored once in a queue, but we see like tons of ways to expand this to then have like ways to select that multiple annotators should annotate the same item to then see how they correlate, and like more analytics around like SLAs, how you label data within these queues. Like there's so many things because like how to build annotation tooling in a more general sense is well developed. So now it's more about bringing these kind of interfaces into the Langfuse product for it to be like nicely integrated here. Because some teams just like today, for example, sync Langfuse objects to Label Studio or Label Box both ways via the API. And we just want to basically bring the basic experience of labeling data to then improve your evaluation workflow. We want to bring this into Langfuse without having to adopt a new tool and then sync data both ways via the API. That's the core goal here.
Cool. Next question is about, there's a is the perplexity bug mentioned here, and I'll talk about this, relevant only to UI use? Can I use traces to monitor perplexity zonal models? And the answer here is yes, you can trace the perplexity models. There's an unconfirmed bug in the repository where someone wanted to use the perplexity zonal models with the playground or with the evals, so to add them to their account. And it's still an unconfirmed bug, so we need more information to find out what exactly went wrong there or why it didn't work, because they follow the OpenAI schema. But that is entirely separate from tracing, so you can trace these models. That shouldn't be a problem.
You know, so I'll try to just sign up for their API. Maybe I can just like reproduce this myself. This was one of the bugs, and it's on our list to then like we currently try to triage it and then fix it.
And then William, you were asking, will there be a developer access from the paid version? Can you expound a little bit, William? What do you mean? Do you mean for self-hosting or?
I'm asking about that for testing. So if you want to integrate with other things, so you can basically, if you're advising clients to take the paid version, then you want to make sure what you're handing them,
yes,
had been tested by basically you, so you know any queries you can address.
Yeah, makes sense. I think like for that, you can just send me an email, and depending on sort of what you work on, if it's, you're a consultancy advising clients, resetting to them, then like happy to chat. You can just send me an email, and like with enterprise clients that approach us, we also often give people a free trial to have a look around and give them a trial key so that they can experience the full version of Langfuse in self-hosting. The easiest way to get that experience those to just use our cloud version and sign up even for a test account on our managed cloud, where you can create a free account which has all features and is even a little bit ahead of the self-hosting version at this point. So just using cloud.langfuse.com is the easiest way to use all features for free right now.
Okay, I'll send you an email in the morning. Are you European time?
Yes, we are.
Right. Okay, I'll send you one in the morning. Right. Thank you.
Cool. Next question is: it seems your main target users are developers. Thing is that devs can set up their own logging prod data in Grafana. Shouldn't you be focused more on data scientists, building and designing LLM apps, and testing what is actually possible on different experiments that can be audited in the product? Marc, I think that's one you're passionate about.
Yeah. We initially started mostly working with like engineering leads, very technical teams building new like products relying on LLMs. And now we basically have these two target segments where for one, they are like engineers trying to figure out how to improve the applications or figuring out like smart ways to, for example, cut down on latencies or improve quality, but then also like data scientists or PMs trying to improve on their metrics or monitoring their metrics in prod, and then like running experiments in development. I think this is usually like a broad set of different users, which also makes like that's why usually like logging and just logging it to Grafana isn't the like end all to this kind of problem, because you kind of want to have the loop of learning from prod, then based on this doing something in development or running this annotation workflow on top of the data, which is also difficult to construct when like rolling this on your own. So we try to like solve this for the team and not for the persona, because while the developer might just want to see logs in like an error case, like identifying the error case is super hard when building this yourself, as long as you don't like just rely on user feedback but want to run more evals on it. And the second is, if it's like a team effort where like a PM wants to iterate on a prompt, then it's again like they would need to have a look at logs. I think that's what you were alluding to, that like some of the kind of features are very appealing to like less technical people on the team, but in the end, for this to work and really to accelerate a team building like a complex online application, I think we need like both sides of the equation.
Cool. The next one is on the pricing page. I saw that GDPR was not included in the hobby plan. What is meant by that? So GDPR, like what's not included in the hobby plan is entering into a DPA with us, a data protection addendum, data protection agreement. But there is no specific difference between the hobby and the pro plan in terms of like how we handle data or data residency. So for most intents and purposes, you should be fine just using the hobby version. If you have if you're running Langfuse commercially in your company, then you might want to enter into a DPA with us to fulfill your compliance requirements, and then we would ask you to upgrade to a Langfuse Pro plan.
Yeah, this is just like for our side. Basically, we have tons of like people like also onboarding and trying the product, and like handling these kind of legal affairs is a bit of like over on our team. We want to focus on product, meaning either like handling this commercially or like just going with the free plan limits there.
Cool. Another question is there a community event for Langfuse users to share expertise on how to build agentic workflows? Yes. So for now, there isn't. I think the best place to go would be the Discord right now. And Marc and I were actually chatting about this during the day today, that maybe as a next event, we were thinking about sort of hosting a clinic, office hours, where people can sort of bring in the applications that they are building, and we can give feedback, sort of help folks navigate the challenges they face in building the applications right now, because we are working with thousands of teams by now that build all kinds of LLM applications. So usually we have good pointers and can kind of share best practices of how people approach various problems. So this is definitely something we will take with us and likely like do something to try out if that format works over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
all right.
Really looking forward.
Marc, there's one last open questions. Can you see it? It's about PII.
Apologies if this is re-asking the question, but does Langfuse have the capability to strip PII out of trace messages, or do integrators oftentimes have to put languages in their apps to make it clear that what they type will be stored externally in clear text? Two answers to this question. One, most teams who we know who store PII try to work this out on the like legal side to be able to store it, because you also send PII to like models and then want to see how this affects basically output. So if you strip PII because you don't want to include PII in, for example, a model call, then I mean this is stripped already. But if you want to send data with PII to, for example, like a model provider, but then not included in the logs in Langfuse, this currently needs that you customize the input and output that's logged to Langfuse, which is possible in all, like in our low-level integrations, the SDKs and the decorator. And we, as mentioned earlier, like what we plan to add is basically callbacks to our SDKs, because then you can basically provide your own function. We'll provide a couple of examples on how to strip common elements of PII as like social security numbers or email addresses or credit card numbers. So this is the solution that we are going for. As mentioned earlier, like we debated whether we should like offer PII redaction on like an API level, meaning you can just like select that you don't want to store PII, but what's deemed to be PII is very different among the users we chatted with about this, meaning we don't want to be opinionated what's PII, and therefore we want to shift it to the client side to then just add a callback to the integration so you can customize this and change this on your own. So Kevin, if you have like a follow-up on this, let me know. And I see the message, Paolo, is there a cookbook on this PII strategy? Yes, there's like a documentation on security, like LLM security. You'll find it on the left side, main navigation of the documentation, on how to use open source libraries such as, I think we used LLM Guard for this, and Lekara commercially. Like there are a couple of options. So basically thereby, if you use such a library within your client application, you can either use the redacted prompt with like any model that you use, or you could also technically just use this to then override the inputs and outputs. If anything about this unclear, feel free to use like the link mentioned on the slide of langfuse.com/support, which just refers to the like GitHub discussion support page, where it's really nice to then have a thread about this so we can discuss the best way and then add it back to the documentation. So this is really simple. And Paolo, let us know if you have any questions. And yeah, the X for this will get better. Then a new question by Anonymous, lots of Anonymous here. Regarding support for multimodal features, will you only be providing content rendering, such as audio and video players from links? Will you also allow file search using Langfuse managed bucket storage? Currently, Langfuse supports just rendering images if you provide like a source URL. But what we plan to add is that Langfuse stores the blobs as well. So if you use, for example, base64 images or when audio is streamed, and thereby basically storing these like media files in a Langfuse managed bucket storage, yes, because this doesn't work well in any kind of database if we try to store videos. So yeah, this is like one of the planned changes that I mentioned on the roadmap. Very excited about this and something that's high up on our list.
All right, I think we are through with all questions. Oh, there's another one coming in. Plans for adding retention policy feature to Langfuse, clearing up traces after a certain period of time. Yes, very much. Already available on the Teams plan. If you want, you can reach out. So this is, again, a feature that we make available commercially. Feel free to contact us if you want to talk about activating that for your account.
Yes, and if you self-host today, we have like a public thread on GitHub discussions, as well as I think in the FAQs on how to just run queries on a schedule to do this yourself if you want to clean data from your database to either keep it small or to like delete historical data. Paulo, yes. The LM security, Paulo is asking whether LM security is like an open source feature. Yes, 100%, because we basically highlight how to use Langfuse evaluation capabilities. So the scores data object to then monitor these kind of metrics on top of traces. So we highlight how to use like LM security libraries, such as Lakera or LM Guard, where, for example, if you use like content moderation to block, I don't know, topics, I don't know, you generate children stories and you don't want to have like war stories in them, I don't know, or some kind of violence. So if you have like a violence content blocker, then you have like a new problem of this runs at runtime, adds latency, and it can also be wrong. And then you also want to probably use annotations to label data in case the content blocking didn't work well. So this aligns very well with the problems you usually have around evaluation anyway. So you can just run, for example, content blocking in prod, like add this as a score to a trace, as you can see for which traces in Langfuse content, like violence was a problem when you use content blocking, for example, with LM security, and then correlate this with like annotations or other evals. I think we like the documentation page is kind of comprehensive. Again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. This is like an exciting topic, especially with all, I think, of the high-risk customer-facing applications, where I think once someone asked, like, what features actually get shipped, and it seems like the low-risk ones or the internal ones get shipped in large organizations, but then the user-facing ones that might be risky usually are kind of slow to move. And for all of these ones, like nailing LM security is really interesting. So like support in like large organizations, for example.
Okay, if there's no last remaining questions, or if anyone wants to unmute themselves and share something, then I think we are going to wrap it up here for today. And yeah, stay in touch. You can join the Discord. I think that's kind of the easiest way to have a more community experience sort of in the day-to-day. And look out for our email newsletters. We'll announce these sessions regularly as they come up. We will also be hosting an in-person event in San Francisco in October. So if you're around San Francisco or the Bay Area, you can also shoot us a message and we can make sure to invite you to that.